Okay, this is Brent Leary, and I'm on day two at at ZeroCon in Austin, Texas, with the folks at Zero, and I'm sitting here with one of the partners that is here at the conference, Busby from AWS. And I can tell from the accent you're not necessarily from Texas, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. First time in Texas, actually.
Oh, very cool, man.
Yeah.
So you were, well, like I said, AWS is a partner of Zero. Actually, Zero runs their platform on AWS.
Yeah, correct.
So I just want to talk to you about some more SMB focused things.
Sure.
And I know last week was the big reInvent conference for AWS in Vegas.
Yep.
So maybe you could give us some of the highlights or some of the key things that maybe the SMB crowd would learn and be able to use to learn more about how they could possibly be using AWS.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the big key focuses for AWS at reInvent last week was machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? So we announced a number of products that kind of democratize machine learning, right? So historically, machine learning, you've had to have a data scientist or a machine learning expert on your staff or be able to get access to one. And these people are they're rare and they're really expensive, and it makes it really difficult for SMBs to actually utilize that, right? And so, if I give you an idea of some of the product announcements that we made and then how those get used by or could get used by SMBs, we announced a thing called SageMaker, right? And this was hugely well received by our customers. The idea is that it's a kind of a guided process through creating a machine learning model to solve problems, right? And it's not dictatorial about what problem you have, but it ships with a number of really useful examples. So what you can do with SageMaker is you can create what's called a notebook, which is a way of expressing kind of the problem you've got and the sort of model you want to run to interpret some results. And so you create a notebook and it ships with a bunch of predetermined models. A really useful one for SMBs is, for example, customer churn. Right? So you could input a bunch of your existing data, and that might be some of your sales history for your customers, right? It might be if you maintain a website, you might have clickstream data. So an idea of, when a user visits your website, how long do they spend on the site, what pages are they looking at, what kind of products inside are they looking at, are they adding things to their basket, removing things. So take whatever data you've got, give it to the SageMaker process, and tell it you want to look at this particular class of problem, like customer churn, right? And SageMaker will then run up an environment. It'll train a model based on the data you've given it, and then it will use some of the remaining data to assess how accurate that model is, and then it'll produce a bunch of findings for you, right? Which you can then look at in SageMaker. You can export them out and look at them in another tool or whatever. And the idea is that then you can get a model based on the data you've got to say, well, what does my customer churn look like, right? And you can then take that model and apply it to future transactions or future behavior. Wow. So you can start identifying, for example, if a customer's exhibiting this behavior, are we in a position where we might start losing that customer, right? Once you know that or you suspect that, then you're in a powerful position. You can start taking action to say, well, if we did this thing, maybe that we wouldn't lose that customer. Right. And so historically, that's kind of been the sort of stuff where you've needed, like I say, data scientists and machine learning experts. And the idea behind things like SageMaker is to make this kind of stuff accessible to, you might not be able to kind of drag and drop this stuff as a business person, but it's going to be much easier for you to find your current IT people, your tech support, the kind of folks you deal with day to day, and get them involved in using this stuff to help you solve these business problems.
That's really cool. What about, everybody is talking about Alexa and Echo. Yep. What do small businesses, some of them feel that's kind of out of our reach. Is that something that the AWS can help them kind of get into and start looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, during our day 2 keynote, the Amazon.com CTO, a guy called Dr. Werner Vogels, talked about kind of interaction models these days with pieces of software, right? Now, historically you've had an old kind of green screen, you can type stuff in on a keyboard or punch cards. And increasingly, we're moving more towards more human-centered interaction models with things. And Alexa's a really good example of that, right? Like I have one at home, and it's super useful for my kids to be able to do things like telling it what music they want, or setting a timer, or asking questions about the weather, or just investigative facts. You know, playing simple like games, like 20-question type games, things like that, right? And so, what we've built Alexa to be from the ground up is to be extensible and be open. So, as a small business owner, you can write what's called an Alexa skill, right, and plug that into Alexa, and then publish it and make it available for people. Right, so we've announced Alexa skills in the past from people like Domino's, where you can order a pizza through Alexa, right? Uber, where you can order a ride through Uber, right? And these are large companies with lots of resources to throw at that. But actually creating an Alexa skill is fairly easy. You do need a degree of computer programming experience. Like, it's not something that you can just walk into if you've never programmed a computer. So if you're a really small business, you might still be working with your IT provider or getting an AWS partner in who has the skills and the development experience to be able to do this. But it's not a massive amount of effort. You're not talking like 3 years and millions of dollars to do this, right? You essentially write out like intents, which are this is the kind of question my customer will ask.
Right.
How do I order a coffee? I'm going to say something along the lines of, Alexa, I want to order a coffee, or Alexa, order me a coffee. You write these things out, then you write out a system that interfaces with your services, and that's not a lot of code. And then you write, how do I respond? Here's your coffee, here's your order number, right? And Alexa will take care of turning those pieces of text back into voice. It'll take care of understanding what the customer's asking when they're speaking to the device. And so I think the biggest challenge for small businesses is that middle point of Alexa's, it now understands what you want it to do, and it needs to send that to you. And so as a small business, you need to have systems that are equipped to say, when someone orders like a bunch of nails from me, how do I process that order, right? If I have a website and I can process customer orders through my website, I'm probably already 90% of the way there to being able to plug Alexa into that kind of, that automated process of someone can do that.
Right.
If you don't have any kind of e-commerce channel today or any kind of digital presence or website, then integrating Alexa into something like that doesn't exist is going to be more effort, right?
Yeah.
So you might start with something that's actually fairly basic, like what it ends up doing is sending basically an email to you, right? Now that doesn't mean that you're going to get you're not going to be able to respond and ship a bunch of nails to your customer immediately, or book them a hair appointment immediately, but you will be able to at least understand that someone's asked for it, right? So depending on how advanced you are as a business already in sort of digital, e-commerce and things like that, is going to be, that's how much easier it's going to be for you to integrate with Alexa. But it's certainly easy to do so.
So you've been with AWS for about 3.5 years.
Yep.
I asked you this a little bit before, so I wanted to get you on camera and talk about, what are the biggest things, maybe misperceptions or challenges that small businesses may have when they think about AWS? Well, some things that they maybe is stopping them from using it to their fullest.
Sure. So I think there's potentially a perception that we're not big enough to use this, and the reality is that we've got customers right from extremely large customers, like all the way down to very, very small organizations, right? And so if you're a small customer, and you've got a business problem around your accounts are currently being done manually, you don't want to end up going and building your own accounting software, right? So go and use Xero as a really great example, right? They're a software as a service. I mean, they run on AWS, which is great. But that solves a business problem for you, right? So sometimes you'll go and use software as a service, things like that, right? Amazon has things that'll do stuff like managed email for you with Workmail, or managed virtual desktops and things like that if you need remote workers and things, right? But you'll also find that there's going to be times when, if you're a small business, you've got certain things that you need to do, and it's going to involve writing some software to solve that, right? And that's the point where you can start, if you've got software development teams inside your company, then you can get the software development teams to use AWS directly. If you're a really small business, you probably don't have software developers, right? Go to an AWS partner, and these are tech organizations with developers and experience using AWS, that can take your business problem and convert that into here's a piece of software or here's some code, whatever, that runs on Amazon that solves your business problem. And it doesn't have to be 3 years and millions of dollars and a massive project these days. It can be stuff where whoever's developing it, whether it's you internally or your partner, can be developing stuff in an agile format. We develop a minimum viable product, we get it in front of you, and we say, what do we need to do next? Like, how do we change this and evolve it, right? So even small businesses can start taking advantage of AWS.
And it's not just the high flyer, born in the cloud companies. Traditional small businesses, there are pieces, there's several different services, and there are pieces that they can begin using right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, trying to think of a really great example. At a really, really basic fundamental level, right? Things like backing up all of your information somewhere, right? Have you got systems on site right now, servers on site, something like that? Backing up into AWS provides you an off-site backup, like really simple and easy. Right. But there are, often what we find with even very traditional organizations is that they will have some kind of new, like direction or marketing or something like that. And that's an impetus for you to make a break into the cloud. Right? So you may already be you may be doing like paper ledgers today and handwritten like accounts.
Paper ledgers.
Right? It happens. You may be a very traditional organization, but you may find that there's a new like business venture you want to go into, a new marketing campaign you want to launch, right? If you want to launch a new kind of marketing campaign, something like that, then rather than running that yourself in your existing systems, doing that as a project in the cloud in AWS, if it's not successful, and sometimes these things aren't, right? They're experiments. We're going to try and create a new thing and see how it works. If it's not successful, then you're not tied into years of contractual stuff and massive capital upfront spends. You fail fast, you fail cheaply, you learn from it, right? If it's wildly successful and it turns out to be 100 times bigger than you thought, then you can really easily scale up the amount of stuff you use in Amazon. Yes, you'll be paying more for it, but that's because the stuff is wildly successful and you're earning a lot of money out of it, which is great. Right.
Well, and since we're here at Xero, real quick, they're running on AWS.
Yep.
And they are going after small businesses to get them up using accounting in the cloud. As a AWS partner, are you seeing companies like Xero getting into AWS and making it easier for them to find other small business applications and integrate because that is also in the AWS cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Xero's ecosystem marketplace is one of their most visited pages. Right.
Wow, okay.
So and Rod said in his keynote speech here at XeroCon yesterday that it's going beyond just accounting, right? Like accounting is an obvious first step and it solves a problem for a business, but it's not the be all and end all of things, right? And so if you're a small business and you make the leap into, we want to start doing stuff on the cloud, accounting's a pain for us, it's long-winded and difficult, let's use Xero, and we give that a go. And you can go to Xero and you can go to their marketplace page and see their partners, and then start looking at other things. So what if we want to automate and cloudify and revolutionize our point of sale systems, right? So rather than an old kind of cash register, we're now going to have an iPad and this and that and the other, plug into the cloud for all of our point of sale. So you can go to the marketplace page and look at point of sale systems like Vend, again, an AWS customer, and start using that and plug that into Xero, right? So now you're getting point of sale data plugged straight into your accounting system, right? You can plug in like customer loyalty systems, right? So now you're understanding the behavior of your repeat customers. And so it goes beyond kind of just picking a single thing in the cloud and trying to create one of the things that Xero is really passionate about, creating an ecosystem and a way for you to easily take these bits of different problems and push them all together to solve a much bigger business problem.
Busby, where can people go to learn more about AWS and where can small businesses learn where maybe to get a good partner to use that?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to aws.amazon.com, that's our main AWS page. If you go to aws.amazon.com/partners, that lists all of our partners. If you also just do a search for AWS case studies, and so this is really super useful, right? We have case studies for like large enterprises, for small businesses, for startups, for government, all these different kind of like sectors. So you can go and look at case studies where for startups and small business, where we've talked about here are the successes that small businesses have had by using AWS. And that's really useful for you as a small business because it shows you the art of what's possible.